evening, or good morning, football fans, wherever you may be. Big Al here on this late 2 Central Time Zones and soon to be the Mountain Time Zone outside of Arizona. But either way, welcome into another edition of the week that was, as we take a look back at week number 3 of the 2022 NFL season. And if you've been here before, you pretty much know how this works. But if you're new, statistical numbers from all 16 NFL games, plus I'll tell you how I did with my picks straight up and against the spread. And at the end, top of my Facebook page, just go to www.facebook.com/Big L Williams. And you'll see them right there. Okay, let's not waste any time. I'm running very behind on this. So let's jump into the week that was, week number 3 of the 2022 NFL season, kicking off as always with Thursday Night Football and an AFC North Division battle with the Cleveland Browns and the number 21 in my power rankings. The Steelers were ranked number 20, so they were right next to each other. And it's the home team that gets the win here on Thursday night, 29-17. The Browns defeating the Steelers. And Cleveland improves its record to 2-1. They travel down to Atlanta to face the Falcons on Sunday, while the 1-2 Steelers host New York Jets at what is now Acrisure Stadium. It's no longer Heinz Field, it's Acrisure Stadium. All right, let's take a look at passing yards for both teams. 0.61 yards for 564 yards, 6.13 average per play, and 188 yards per game, which ranks 27th in the NFL. The Steelers threw the ball 32 times for 204, 3 passes for 548 yards, 5.12 yards per pass attempt, 182.7 yards per game, which were 572 yards, 5.02 yards per rush, and number 1 in the NFL in average rush yards per game at 190.7. Pittsburgh ran 22 times for 104, averaging 0.45 yards per play. And through 3 games this season, 206 plays for 1,136 yards, 5.5 average, and 5 in the league, and 272.7 yards per game. That's number 31. The Browns have 22 first downs in the game. 20 third down conversions were not good for Pittsburgh. 1 for 9 on the day for 11.154. Time of possession, defense records 30. They now have 108 total tackles and 65 solo. They had just 1 sack on the night, giving them 7 on the season. 1 forced fumble, which ups their total to 4. They have 4 passes defended, pushing their total to 16. No interceptions or touchdowns. They still have the 1 pick from an earlier game. The Steelers defense records 52 tackles, 25 solo. They now have 157 tackles and 68 tackles through 3 games. Teams combined for 46 points, 123 total plays, and 684 yards, averaging 5.56 yards per play combined. I picked the Browns to win 24-17, and I also picked the Browns to cover the 4 points. Cleveland wins by 12, so I win both picks. Now to the Sunday afternoon schedule, starting off with the Baltimore Ravens at New England Patriots. The Ravens came in at number 9 in my Week 3 power rankings. The Patriots, number 12. And Foxborough was a house of Foxborough has been a house of horrors for the Baltimore Ravens. They had dropped their last 6 games at Gillette Stadium, affectionately known by Patriots fans as the Razor. But Lamar Jackson balled out, and the Ravens snapped that 6-game road losing streak to the Pats, winning 37-26. So Baltimore improves to 2-1 on the season. They're tied atop the AFC North with the Browns. And next up, they will host the Buffalo Bills on Sunday over at M&T Bank Stadium. The Bill Belichick coach Patriots fall to 1-2. And next up is a trip to Lambeau Field and a date with Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. Now, there is some bad news for the Patriots coming out of this game. Starting quarterback Mac Jones suffered what appears to be a rather severe high ankle sprain and will more than likely miss several weeks for the Patriots. So it looks like Brian Hoyer will be the starting quarterback for New England while Jones recovers from that injury. Okay, looking at passing numbers. The not the Green Bay Packers, but the Baltimore Ravens had 29 games, 88 passes for 735, averaging 8.35 per play, and 245. The Patriots had 32 passes for 302 yards, averaging 9.44 yards per play. And in 3 games, 98 passes for 747-11. As far as the ground attack, the Ravens and Patriots both ran the ball pretty well. Baltimore ran the ball 26 times for 188 yards, averaging 7.23 yards per run. And for the season, 72 runs for 406 yards, averaging 5.64 yards a tote, and 135.3 yards per game, putting them number 8 in the league. The Patriots, 28 rushes for 145, averaging 5.18 yards per rush, and 81 total runs in 3 games for 347, averaging 4.28 yards per run, 115.7 yards per game. That's number 13 in the NFL. The Patriots outgained the Ravens in this game. 60 plays for New England for 447, averaging 7.45 yards per play, and 179 plays in 3 games for the Patriots for 1,094 yards, averaging 6.11 yards per play, and 364.7 yards per game, which is number 10 in the National Football League. The Ravens ran 55 plays for 394, averaging 7.16 per play. And in 3 games, they've run 160 plays for 1,141 yards, 7.13 yards per play, and 380.3 yards per game, which is number 4. The Patriots had 22 first downs. Conversions were not good for them. 2 for 9, 22.2%. For the season, 15 of 35 for 42.9. Fourth down conversions, 1 for 2 for 50%. And for the year, 1 for 3 for 33.3%. The Patriots were flagged just 3 times for 16 yards. They now have 13 penalties on the year for 86. And time of possession was 29 minutes and 24 seconds. For Baltimore, they had 19 first downs, giving them 54 for the season. Third down conversions were 5 for 11 for 45.5%, 13 of 34, in 3 games for 38.2. No fourth down plays in this game. They remain 1 for 3 for the season. And they had just 2 penalties for 10 yards and only 8 penalties through 3 games for 44. They are the least penalized team in the NFL through 3 weeks. Time of possession is 30 minutes, 36 seconds. The Ravens defense had 48 tackles, 30 solo tackles, pushing their numbers to 143 and 86. They recorded 3 sacks in this game, pushing their season total to 7. They had 2 forced fumbles, 4 on the season. 6 passes defended, pushing their total to 17. And they doubled their interception total with 3 picks on Mac Jones. And now the Raven defense has 6 interceptions and still no defensive scores. New England's D records 38 tackles and 19 solo. They have 114 tackles and 53 solo. They recorded 4 sacks on Lamar Jackson, moving their season total to 10. They had 1 forced fumble, which pushes them to 3. They now have 8 passes defended on the season after recording 2 more on Sunday. They had an interception and no touchdowns. The team now has 2 INTs. Closing line was Baltimore minus 2.5. Over-unders 44.5. This game finishes over the total as the 2 teams combined for 63 points, 115 offensive plays, and 841 yards, averaging a cool 7.31 yards per play combined. I picked Baltimore to win 28-17. I win that pick, and I took the ATS pick as well as the Ravens covered the 2.5 points. Give me just a second. I gotta do something real quick. There we go. Okay. All right, let's speed things up because we're 15 minutes in and I've only gone through 2 games. All right. Bills at Dolphins. Buffalo has owned Miami, winning the last 7 in the series, but that streak's now over as the Dolphins defeated the Bills by a final of 21-19. So Miami takes sole possession of first place in the AFC East with a 3-0 record. They're one of 2 unbeatens left in the NFL. And they got a quick turnaround because they go to Cincinnati on Thursday night to face the Bengals. While the Bills suffer their first loss, they fall to 2-1. They're off to Baltimore to face the Ravens. All right, passing yards for both teams, starting with the Dolphins, 20 for 171, 8.55 yards per play, and 103 passes all told for 874 yards, 8.49 average, at 291.3 yards per game. That's number 4 in the NFL. The Bills, with a franchise record, 63 passes for 382 yards, averaging 6.06 yards per pass. 134 total passes for 787, averaging 7.37 yards per pass. And they lead the NFL in passing yards at 329 per game. All right, the Dolphins' ground attack was non-existent. Only 17 carries for 41 yards, averaging 2.41 yards per run. And for the year, 58 rushes for 192 yards, 3.31 yards per run. And they're averaging just 64 yards per game on the ground. That's 31st in the NFL. The Bills did run the ball some. 23 carries for 115, averaging exactly 5 yards per run. And for the season, 72 runs for 337, averaging 4.68 per run, and 112.3 per game, putting them 15th. All right, the Bills ran 86 plays for 497 yards, averaging 5.78 yards per play. And for the season, 206 plays for 124 yards, averaging 6.43 yards per play, 441.3 yards per game, which leads the AFC and puts them number 2 overall in the NFL. The Miami Dolphins ran only 37 plays for 212 yards, averaging 5.73 yards per play. And on the season, 161 plays for 1,066 yards, 6.62 average, 355.3 yards per game, which is 13th. First downs in this game, more than a 2-1 edge to Buffalo, 31-15. The Bills now have 77 first downs to 66 for Miami, or rather 60 for Miami. The Bills were 11 of 18 on third downs for 61.1%, putting them at 25 for 41 on the season at 61%. Miami was 3 of 8 on third downs for 37.5% and 16 of 33 for the season, 48.5%. The Dolphins did not attempt a fourth down. They remain a perfect 3 for 3 on fourth downs this season. Buffalo went 2 for 3, 66.7%. They're now 4 for 6 in that category. The Dolphins were penalized 4 times for 20 yards. They now have 16 for 91. And the Bills had 7 penalties for 52, 20 total for 136. Time of possession is better than a 2-1 edge to Buffalo. 42 minutes and 20 seconds to 19 minutes, 16 seconds for the Miami Dolphins. And this is our ball hawk of the week. And that goes to the team that possesses the ball longer than anyone in the NFL in a given week. At 42 minutes and 20 seconds, congrats to the Buffalo Bills. All right, 59 tackles total for the Dolphins, 29 solo, 136 and 60 are their totals in that department. They had 4 sacks on the afternoon on Josh Allen, bringing their total to 6. 2 forced fumbles in the game. They now have 4. 9 passes defended, bringing their total to 17. And they didn't have an interception or a touchdown in this game, but they do have a pick from earlier this season. The Bills have 25 total tackles, 4 solo, bringing their totals to 114 and 59. They finished with 2 sacks on Tua Tagovailoa, bringing their total to 11. They still have yet to record a forced fumble in 3 games this year. They have 3 passes defended, bringing their total to 17. So they have as many as the Dolphins. No interceptions or touchdowns. They have 5 and 1 of those in that category. All right. Closing line was Buffalo -4 over under 54.5. This game finishes under the total, way under, at 40 points. 2 teams combined for 123 plays, 709 yards, 5.76 yards per play on average. I picked the Bills to win 34-24. Obviously took the loss there. And I took Buffalo to cover the 4 points. And again, taking the loss there. All right. Bengals defeat the Jets 27-12. Cincinnati will host the undefeated Dolphins on Thursday night, while the Jets travel to Pittsburgh to face the Steelers. Both teams sit with 1-2 records. All right, and total yards are nearly evenly distributed by the 2 teams. I'll tell you about that in a second. All right, the Bengals ran 36 pass plays for 261 yards, averaging 7.25 yards per pass. And for the season, 125 passes for 725, averaging 5.8 yards per pass, and 241.7 yards per game. That's 14th. The Jets threw the ball 52 times for 252 yards. They averaged 4.85 yards per pass, 156 total passes in 3 games for 856 yards, averaging 5.49 yards per pass and 258.3 yards per game, putting them in the top 5 in passing. The Bengals ran the ball 29 times for 69 yards, 2.38 average. In 3 games, 88 runs for 291, 3.31 average, and 97 yards per game, putting them number 20 in the rushing department. The Jets, 20 runs for 76 yards, 3.8 average on Sunday against the Bengals. And in 3 games, 57 rushes for 252 yards, 4.42 yards per run, 84 yards per game. That is number 26. Right, the Bengals ran 65 plays for 330 yards, 5.08 average, 213 total plays for 1,016 yards, 4.77 yards per play, 338.7 yards per game. That's number 20. The Jets ran 72 plays for 328, averaging 4.16 yards per play. 213 plays in 3 games for 1,108 yards, 5.2 yards per play, 369.3 yards per game. That's number 9 in the league. First downs favored Cincinnati slightly, 20-19. The Bengals now have 71. The Jets have 63. Bengals were 50% on third down, 7 of 14. The Jets 38.9% at 7 of 18. The Bengals on on third downs are 21 for 47. The Jets are 17 for 47. Cincinnati went 0 for 1 on fourth downs. They're 2 for 5 for the season. And New York went 0 for 3 on fourth downs, putting them right at 50% for the year, 4 out of 8. The Bengals had 5 penalties for 30 yards. They've got 16 total for 92. New York had 4 penalties for 55 yards and 18 on the season for 193. Time of possession favored Cincy, 34 to 27-36. The Bengals defense recorded 46 tackles, 22 solo, 131 and 82 totals there. 4 sacks on Joe Flacco, bringing their total to 9. They forced 3 fumbles in the game. That gives them 5 on the year. They had 8 passes defended, bringing their total to 15. And they recorded their first 2 INTs of 2022. The Jets defense, 43 tackles, 21 solo, 125 and 59 are the total tackles there. 2 sacks on the afternoon, 5 on the season. 1 forced fumble, 2 on the season. 4 passes defended, 11 total. No interceptions or touchdowns, but they do have 2 INTs on the season. Closing line was the Bengals -6.5 over under 45.5. This game finishes under at 39 points with 137 offensive plays, 658 yards. Combined average is 4.80 yards per play. I picked Cincinnati to win straight up 27-23, but I unfortunately took the Jets to cover the 6.5 points. But they ended up losing by 15, so I ended up losing the ATS pick. And that may appear to be a theme there. All right, we're 30 minutes in and I only got through one page. So let's jump into hyperspeed now. All right, the next game has the Lions at the Vikings. And the Lions doing typical Lion things, shooting themselves in the foot with some terrible penalties at the end, and some questionable play calling, and that what led Minnesota to a fourth quarter comeback as they defeat Detroit 28-24. Minnesota goes to 2-1, and they're heading overseas this week as they will face the New Orleans Saints on Sunday out in London. The Lions return home to Ford Field to host the Seattle Seahawks. They are 1-2. Okay. Both teams threw the ball 41 times. The Vikings had 250 yards on their 41 throws, averaging 6.1, and for the season, 119 passes for 721, averaging 6.06 per play, and 240.3 yards per pass, or 240.3 yards per game. That puts them at number 15. While the Lions got 277 yards off of their 41 passes, averaging 6.76 per pass. 112 total throws for 716, averaging 6.39 yards per pass, and 238.7 yards per pass. That's 16th, I think. I can't even read my own handwriting. Okay, the Vikings had 25 rushes for 120 yards, averaging 4.92 yards per run against the Lions. And in 3 games, 64 rushes for 311, 4.86 average per play, 103.7 per game. That's 19th. Detroit ran the ball 35 times for 139, 3.97 average per play, and 87 runs for 511 yards, 5.87 yards per run, and 170.3 yards per game. That's number 3 in the NFL. As far as total yards go, advantage goes to the Lions. 76 plays for 416 yards, 5.47 average. In 3 games, they've run 199 plays for 1,227 yards, averaging 6.17 yards per play and 409 yards per game. That's 3rd in the NFL. And Minnesota ran 66 plays for 373, averaging 5.65 yards against Detroit. And in 3 games, 183 plays for 1,032 yards, 5.64 yards per play, and 344 yards a game, ranking them 18th. First downs favorite Minnesota, 30-23. The Vikings now have 69 first downs. The Lions have 63. Neither team were good on 3rd down. They both struggled. The Vikings were 2 for 9 for 22.2%, putting them at 10 of 34 for the season. And the Lions were 3 of 16 for 18.8%. They're now 16 of 43 on the year. The Vikings were 50% on 4th down at 1 for 2, and they are 2 for 3 for the season. How about the Lions? 4 for 6 on 4th down and 5 for 9 for the season. Only 3 penalties for the Vikings for 15 yards. They have 11 for 60 through 3 games. Detroit was penalized 7 times for 59 yards and 15 times for 129. Time of possession, big advantage to the Lions. 34 minutes, 4 seconds versus 25:56 for Minnesota. The Vikings defense had 59 tackles, 37 solo. They're up to 122 total and 86 solo. No sacks in the game. They stay at 7. No forced fumbles in the game. They stay with that 1. 7 passes defended. However, that brings their total to 12. And they added another interception, which gives them 3. And still no defensive scores for the Minnesota Vikings. The Lions defense, 49 tackles, which puts them at 154. And 29 solo tackles, pushing their total to 84. They had 1 sack in the game. That gives them 7. They had no forced fumbles, so they stay with 1. They only had 2 passes defended, bringing their total to 8. No interceptions or touchdowns. They do have 1 pick from earlier this year. Closing lines, Minnesota minus 6.5, over-unders 51.5. This game finished slightly over by this much, 52 points, 142 plays, 789 yards, 5.56 yards combined average. I picked the Vikings to win straight up 27-24. And I picked the Lions to cover the 6.5 points. I won both picks. Texans at Bears. Chicago wins 23-20. The Bears are a surprising 2-1. They're tied with the Vikings atop the NFC North as they head to New York on Sunday to face the Giants. More on their game with the Cowboys at the end of this rundown. The Texans remain winless at 0-2-1. They're back home to host the injury-riddled Chargers on Sunday. All right. So looking at passing yards, 17 passes for the Bears this week for 82 yards, 4.82 average. And how about 45 total passes in 3 games for 235 yards, 5.22 yards per pass. They're averaging 78.3 yards per game, dead last in the NFL. The Texans, 32 passes for 237, 7.41 average per play. 107 passes for 613, 5.73 average per pass, 204.3 per game. That's 25th. How about Chicago's ground attack? 40 rushes for 281, 7.03 average per run. 104 total rushes for 560, averaging 5.38 yards per run. And 186.7 rushing yards per game. That's number 2 in the NFL behind Cleveland. The Texans, 24 rushes, 92 yards, 3.83 average. 70 rushes total for 249, averaging 3.56 and 83 yards a game. That's number 27. Total yards. 57 plays and 363 for the Chicago Bears, averaging 6.37 yards per play, and 149 total offensive plays for 795 yards, 5.34 average, and 265 yards per game, which is also dead last in the NFL. The Texans, 56 plays ran for 329 yards, 5.88 average, and in 3 games, 177 plays for 862, 4.87 average per play, 287.3 yards per game, which ranks 29th. First downs were even, as both had 17. The Texans now have 52 first downs in 3 weeks, while the Bears have 43. Chicago was 6 of 14 on third downs for 42.9%. They're now 12 of 35 for the year. The Texans were 3 of 12 on third down for 25%. They are also 25% for the season at 10 for 40. No fourth down plays for the Bears. They remain 0 for 1. The Texans went 1 for 1 on, and they are now 2 for 4 on the season. 6 penalties for the Bears for 32 yards gives them 16 total for 106. Houston had 2 penalties for 25 yards, 17 total for 159. Time of possession favors Chicago, 31 minutes and 20 seconds versus 28 minutes and 38 seconds for the Texans. Chicago recorded 34 tackles, none solos, so they now have 135 total tackles, and they remain at 62 solo tackles. 1 sack in the ball game, giving them 6 on the season. 3 forced fumbles in this game, moving their total to 4. 6 passes defended. They're up to 11. And they added 2 interceptions to their total, which is now 3, with no defensive touchdowns. Houston's defense records 48 total tackles and 25 solo, 149 total tackles, 61 solo for the season. How about 6 sacks on Justin Fields, giving the Texans 11 for the year? They forced no fumbles. They stay at 2. 3 passes defended gives them 20. And they added 2 more interceptions as well, bringing their season total to 4. And they, too, have no defensive touchdowns. Closing line was Chicago -3, over under 39.5. This game finished slightly over that mark at 43, with 113 total plays by the two teams and 692 yards. Combined average yards per play is 6.12. I picked the Bears to win 20-14 and to cover the 3 points. I won both picks. All right. Chiefs visiting the Colts. And this was probably one of the worst Chiefs games I've seen in a while, as Kansas City loses to Indianapolis 20-17. The Colts finally get their first win of the season. They are now 1 win, 1 loss, and 1 tie, as they will host the division rival Tennessee Titans on Sunday. The Chiefs suffered their first loss of the year. They fall to 2-1. And next up, they travel to Tampa to face the Buccaneers. And I'll tell you how they did with the Packers later. All right. The Colts had 37 passes for 177 yards at 4.78 yards per pass. So far this year, 119 passes, 681 yards, 5.72 yards per pass, 227 yards per game. That's number 20 in the NFL. Kansas City threw 36 passes for 257, averaging 7.14 per pass. And so far, 110 passes for 843, averaging 7.66 yards per pass, and 281 yards per game. That's number 6. On the ground, the Colts had 27 rushes for 82 yards, 3.04 average per play, 78 total rushes through 3 games at 313 yards and a 4.01 average per play, 164.3 yards per game. That's 18th. The Chiefs, 23 runs for 58 yards, 2.52 average per play, 69 total runs for 279, 4.04 average, 93 yards rushing per game. That's 22nd. As far as total yards, 64 plays for the Colts at 259 yards, 4.05 average per play. 197 total plays for 994 yards, 5.05 average, 331.3 yards per game, putting them at number 22. The Chiefs with 59 total plays for 315, 5.34 average per play, 179 total plays, 1,127 yards, 6.27 average, 374 yards per game. That's 7th. First downs in this game, slight advantage to KC, 20-19. The Chiefs now have 68 first downs. The Colts have 61. All right. The Colts were 6 of 15 on third down for 40%, 14 of 40 for the season. The Chiefs were 3 of 10 for 30% and 12 of 30 on the season. Indy went 1 for 3 on fourth downs. They're now 1 for 6 on the year. Chiefs 1 for 2 on fourth downs. They're now 2 for 3. Indianapolis was flagged 4 times for 34 yards. They now have 16 penalties for 153. Kansas City 6 penalties for 45. They are now flagged 15 times for 124. Time of possession favors Indianapolis, 33 minutes and 32 seconds, versus the Chiefs, 26 minutes and 28 seconds. 41 tackles for the Colts, including 21 solo tackles. 147 and 98 are the totals there. 1 sack in the game gives them 4. They remain with 1 forced fumble since they didn't record one this week. 6 passes defended, that gives them 11. 1 interception, and no touchdowns. And then the Chiefs with 47 tackles and 8 solo, 138 and 61 total tackles and solo tackles. They had 5 sacks on the day, giving them 10, so they doubled their number. 2 forced fumbles gives them 3. Only 1 pass defended gives them 14. No interceptions or touchdowns. They had that pick 6 against the Chargers in week 2. Closing line was KC minus 4.5 over under 51. This game finishes under at 37 points. The two teams combined for 123 plays, 574 yards, 4.67 yards per play combined. I picked the Chiefs to win 27-17, and I picked them to cover the 4.5 points. I lost both picks. Raiders and the Titans. One team was going to go 0-3, and that team ends up being the Raiders as they fall to Tennessee 24-22. So the Titans are off the snide. They get their first win as they head into Indianapolis next week. The Raiders are 0-3, and they are a rather unlucky 0-3 if you ask me. They'll host Russell Wilson and the Broncos in Sin City on Sunday. Okay, 27 passes for the Titans for 212 yards, 9.33 average per pass. In 3 games, 84 passes, 625 yards, 7.44 per play, 208.3 per game. That's 23rd in the NFL. The Raiders, 45 passes for an even 300 yards, averaging 6.67 a pass. 121 passes for an even 800 yards, 6.61 yards per pass, and 266.7 per game. That's good for 7. Ground attacks. 27 rushes for Tennessee for 109 yards, 4.04 yards per play. In 3 games, 80 runs for 282, 3.53 average per play, 94 yards per game. That's 21st. Vegas, 19 rushes, 96 yards, 5.05 yards per run. 53 rushes in 3 games for 240 yards, 4.53 yards per run, and 80 yards per game. That is number 28 in the National Football League. Total yards favor the Raiders. 396 on 64 plays, averaging 6.19 yards per play. And in 3 games, 174 plays for 1,040, averaging 5.98 per play, 346.7 per game, ranking them 17th. 361 on 54 plays for the Titans, 6.69 per play. And in 3 games, 164 plays for 907, 5.53 average per play, 302.3 per game, number 26. First downs favored Las Vegas, 24-19. The Raiders now have 62 first downs to 50 for Tennessee. Third down conversions, 5 of 10 for the Titans, 50%, and 12 for 33 on the season. Meanwhile, the Raiders were putrid on third downs. How's 1 for 12 sound for 8.3%? 12 for 34 on the season. Titans 0 for 1 on fourth downs, 1 for 2 on the season. Raiders a perfect 3 for 3 on fourth downs. They're now 4 for 5 on the year for 80%. Tennessee was flagged 7 times for 85 yards, 23 total penalties for 222 yards. Raiders were flagged 6 times for 44 yards and 19 total penalties for 123. Time of possession favors the Raiders. 30 minutes, 45 seconds versus 29-15 for the Titans. Tennessee's defense had 40 tackles, 18 solo, 139 and 80 totals. 1 total sack in the game, 7 on the season. 1 forced fumble in the game, 3 on the season. 6 passes defended, 12 on the season. They added another interception, bringing their total to 2, and they have no defensive touchdowns. 43 total tackles for the Raiders, 25 solo. 143 total, 68 solo on the season. 1 sack gives them 2 on the year, and that ties for the fewest in the NFL. 1 forced fumble also gives them 2. 5 passes defended brings them to 13. And they also added another interception to their total. They're at 2 with no defensive touchdowns. Closing line was Vegas -2. Over under 45.5. Total points were 46. With 118 plays, 757 yards, 6.42 average per play. I picked the Raiders to win 24-16. I lost. I picked the Raiders to cover the 2 points. And again, I lost. All right. All right. Moving on to the Saints at the Panthers. And can we say the Saints are back? Carolina upsets New Orleans 22-14. Both teams are now 1-2 as the Panthers welcome the Arizona Cardinals into Bank of America Stadium on Sunday, while the Saints will be playing a home game in London early Sunday morning against the Minnesota Vikings. All right. 25 passes for the Panthers for 148 yards, 5.92 yards per pass. For 3 games, they have 81 passes, 484 yards, 5.98 average per play, 161.3 per game. That's 31st. New Orleans, 41 passes for 342, 8.34 average per play. 115 plays for 782, 6.8 yards per pass, 260.7 per game. That's number 8. As far as the ground attacks, both were okay. The Panthers had a great ground attack. 31 runs for 145 yards, 4.68 yards per run. 3 games total, 73 plays for 345, 4.73 yards per run, 115 rush yards per game, ranking 14th. As for the Saints, 22 rushes for 84, 3.82 yards per run, and in 3 games, just 61 rushes for 337 yards, 5.52 yards per run, 112.3 yards per game. That's 16th or middle of the pack in the NFL. All right. The Panthers ran 56 plays for only 293 yards, 5.23 average. In 3 games, 154 plays for 829 and a 5.38 average and 276.3 yards per game, ranking them 30th. New Orleans, 63 plays, 426 yards, 6.76 yards per play. 3 games, 176 plays for 1,119 yards, 6.36 yards per play, 370 yards a game. That's number 8. First downs favored the Saints, 19-12. The Saints have 55 first downs in 3 games, the Panthers 45. Third down conversions, 5 of 13 for New Orleans at 38.5%. They were now 13 of 39. Panthers 4 of 14 on third downs for 28.6%. Now 10 of 37 for the year. Panthers were 0 for 1 on fourth downs. They're now 1 for 2 on the season. No fourth down plays for the Saints. They remain 0 for 1. 4 penalties for Carolina, 40 yards, 17 total for 174. 7 penalties for the Saints at 58 yards and 24 total for 217. Time of possession, slight advantage to Carolina, 30 minutes, 10 seconds to 29:50 for New Orleans. All right, 43 total tackles for Carolina defense, 29 solo, 173 total tackles at 49 solo, 1 total sack, 5 in the season, 1 forced fumble, their first of the season, 8 passes defended, bringing their total to 13, and they got their first 2 interceptions in the game. And they also got a defensive touchdown, a fumble recovery for a score. As for the Saints defense, 39 tackles, 10 solo, 130 total, 52 solo. 3 sacks in this game brings them to 4. They remain at 2 forced fumbles. 4 passes defended gives them 12. And they still have yet to record a touchdown defensively or an interception. They're one of 3 teams to do that. Closing line, New Orleans -2 over under 41. This game finishes under at 36 points. The 2 teams combined for 119 plays, 719 yards, 6.04 yards per play. I picked the Saints to win 23-10, and I picked them to cover the 2. I lost both picks. Eagles at Commanders. And boy, are the Eagles legit or what? Philly wins this one 24-8. They remain undefeated at 3-0. They and the Dolphins are the only unbeatens left. Next week, Eagles host the Jacksonville Jaguars, and it's a return to Philly for former head coach Doug Peterson. You may recall, Doug Peterson coached the Eagles to the franchise's only Super Bowl title back in 2017. The Commanders are 1-2. They're off to Dallas to face Cooper Rush and the Cowboys. And again, I'll tell you how they did in the Monday night game with the Giants towards the end of the rundown, so stick around. All right, looking at passing numbers, the Eagles 35 passes for 328 yards, 9.37 yards per pass. 3 games, 98 passes for 890. Averaging 9.08 yards per pass and 296.7 yards per game, ranking them number 3 in passing. The Commanders, 43 passes for 153, averaging just 3.56 yards per pass, and in 3 games, 130 throws for 766, 5.89 average, and 255.3 per game, puts them number 9. All right. The ground attacks were not there for either team. The Eagles' ground attack was silent on this day. 30 rushes for 72 yards, 2.4 average per play. And 104 plays for 451 yards, 4.34 yards per run, and 150. Washington, 22 carries for 87 yards, 3.95 yards a tote. And in 3 games, 71 rushes for 260, 3.66 average, 86.7 yards per game, ranking them number 24. Both teams ran 65 plays. Philadelphia had 400 yards on their 65 plays, averaging 6.15 per play. Washington had 240 on their 65 plays, averaging 3.69 per play. The Eagles' offense in 3 games has run 202 plays for 1,341 yards, averaging 6.64 yards per play. and 447 yards per game, which leads the NFL. Washington's offense in 3 games have run 201 plays for 1,026 yards, 5.1 yards per play, and 342 yards per game, putting them at number 19. First downs favored the Eagles, 21-20, 73 total first downs for Philadelphia, 67 for Washington. And both teams kind of struggled on third downs. 5 of 15 for Philly at 33.3%, 22 of 45 on the year. 35.3%, 6 of 17 for the Commanders. And 20 of 42 for the season. Philly went 2 for 3 on fourth downs. They're now 4 for 6 on the year. Washington 0 for 2 on fourth down and 1 for 4 for the season. Eagles were flagged 5 times for 52 yards, 23 for 173 total. 4 penalties for the Commanders at 48 yards and 12 total for 128. And surprisingly, the time of possession goes in Washington's favor. 32 minutes, 54 seconds. Philly only 27 minutes and 6 seconds. The Eagles defense at 49 tackles, 31 solo. They now have 121 total tackles and 62 solo tackles. And how about this? Former Eagles quarterback Carson Wentz sacked 9 times by his former team. That brings Philadelphia's sack total to a dozen, 12 sacks. 2 forced fumbles in the game. They're up to 3 in that category. 4 more passes defended gives them 19. And they're still at 4 interceptions and 1 defensive touchdown. For the Commanders defense, 46 tackles, 21 solo, 123 and 65. 3 sacks total. 3 sacks in the game and 8 total. They forced no fumbles in this game. They're stuck with the 1. 7 passes defended gives them 16. And they're stuck with the 1 interception with no defensive touchdowns. Closing line was Philadelphia minus 5.5 over under 47.5. This game finishes under the total at 32 with 130 combined plays by the 2 teams and 640 yards. And I forgot to write in that average, so let me tell you what that average is. So again, more quick math. 4.92 was the average combined yards per play by the Eagles and Commanders. You know I was missing something. I picked the Eagles to win 31-17, and I picked Philly to cover the 5.5 points. I won both picks. All right, on to the late games. And forget about the Colts and the Chiefs. This was probably the upset of the week. The Jacksonville Jaguars go into LA and manhandle the Chargers 38-10. And yes, last time that I checked, Jacksonville's still in first place in the AFC South at 2-1. Doug Peterson is headed back home to Philadelphia to face his former team, the Eagles. As for the Chargers, getting bit with injuries left and right. Joey Bosa got hurt in this game. Rashawn Slater is out for the season. And, of course, Justin Herbert playing with that rib issue. They're off to Houston on Sunday to face the Texans with a 1-2 record. Okay, 39 passes for the Jaguars, 262, 6.72 average per pass. 111 total passes for 757, 6.82 average, 252.3 yards per game, puts them in the top 10. The Chargers, 45 passes, 286 yards, 6.36 average, 128 total passes for 891, 6.96 average per pass, 297 yards per game. That's number 2 in the NFL. 36 rushes for the Jaguars for a buck 51, 4.19 average. 91 total runs for 370, 6.26 average, and 123.3 yards per game. That's also in the top 10, as they rank at number 10 in both passing yards and rushing yards. LA, only 12 rushes for 26 yards, 2.17 average. 67 total runs for 177 yards, 2.64 yards per run, and an NFL worst 59 yards rushing per game. Okay, Jaguars ran 75 plays for 413, averaging 5.51 yards per play. And for the season, 202 plays, 1,127 yards, 5.58 average per play, 375.7 average per game, which is number 6. Chargers, 57 plays, 312 yards, 6.12 average, 195 total plays for 1,068 yards, 5.48 yards per play, 306 yards per game. That's number 11. First downs favored Jacksonville, 2016. The Jags now have 70, while the Chargers have 55 first downs. Jacksonville was hitting their third downs. They were 8 of 15 for 53.3%, and so far this year, 17 of 42. The Chargers, 5 of 13, 38.5%, and 16 of 43 for the season. All right, 2 for 3 on fourth downs for the Jaguars, 66.7%, and 0 for 2 for the Chargers. Both teams on the season are at 4 for 7 on fourth down. Jacksonville was only flagged twice for 10 yards. They now have 18 penalties for 119. 7 penalties for LA for 54 yards. They now have 15 total for an even 100 yards. Time of possession, big advantage to Jacksonville. 38 minutes and 27 seconds. That makes them ball hawks. And the Chargers only 21 minutes and 33 seconds. All right, as far as defense, 37 total tackles, 117 on the season for the Jaguars. 24 solo tackles puts them at 73. Okay, 1 sack in the game. They go to 7 in that category. 1 forced fumble in this game. They go to 3 in that category. 9 passes defended, rating their NFL leading total in this category to 26. They added an interception, which gives them 6 on the year with no defensive touchdown. 52 tackles, and half of them were solo for the Chargers. So that brings their numbers to 125 total, 68 solo. 0 sacks in this game. They stay at 7. 0 forced fumbles in this game. They stay at 3. 4 passes defended, 13 total. And they stay at 3 interceptions with no touchdown. I picked LA to win this game 31-21 and to cover the 6.5 points. But given the fact that Jacksonville beat the brakes off the Chargers and won this game by 4 touchdowns, I lost both picks. Falcons at the Seahawks, and it was Atlanta going into the land of the 12s and winning 27-23. Both teams are 1-2 on the young season. Next week, the Falcons return home to host the Cleveland Browns, while the Seahawks travel to Motown to face the Lions in that blazing hot offense. Okay, 20 passes for the Falcons for 207 yards, 10.35 yards per pass. That is not a typo. 79 total passes for 593 yards, 7.51 yards per pass. And 197.7 yards per game. That's 26th. Seattle had 44 passes for 308, averaging 7 yards a pass. 103 total passes for 665, 6.46 yards per pass. 221.7 yards per game. That's ranks 21st. All right, the Falcons, 31 rushes for 179, averaging 5.77 per run. And in 3 games, 98 rushes for 470 yards, 4.8 yards per rush, 156.7 yards per game. That's number 5 in the NFL. Seattle, no ground game, but they did have one on Sunday. 23 carries for 112 yards, 4.87 yards per play. 56 total plays for 224 yards. That's 56 total runs for 224 yards, averaging 4 yards per run. And 74.7 yards rushing per game. That's 29. First downs favored Atlanta, 24-23. 67 total for the Falcons, 56 for the Seahawks. Both teams were great on third downs. 9 of 17 for Seattle for 52.9%. They're now 7-35 for the season. And 4 of 7 for the Falcons at 57.1%. 12 of 30 for the season. No fourth down plays for Atlanta. They're 1 for 2 still. 2 of 3 for Seattle, putting them at 2 of 4. Only 2 penalties for the Falcons for 15 yards, gives them 15 total for 99. Seattle, 6 penalties for 47 yards. They now have 21 for 230 yards. Time of possession favored the Hawks, 31-46 versus 28-14 for Atlanta. Speaking of Atlanta, the Falcons defense, 50 tackles total, brings their total to 124, and 32 solo tackles bumps that number up to 48. They had 2 sacks in the game, no forced fumbles, so they stay at 2 in that category. 8 passes defended, they're up to 13. 1 interception brings their total to 3, and no defensive touchdowns. All right, 36 total tackles for the Seahawks brings their total to 144, and 17 more solo tackles gives them 86. They had 3 sacks in the game, so both the Falcons and Seahawks have 6 sacks on the season. They recorded their 3rd forced fumble of the season. They're now at 8 passes defended after recording 2 against Atlanta, and they added their first interception of the year with no touchdown. Closing line was Seattle -1 over under 43.5. This game goes over the total at 50 points, with the 2 teams combined for 118 plays and 806 yards, combining 6.83 yards per play. I did pick the Falcons to win 23-17 and to cover as the road underdog, and I got both picks. And that may have been my most solid pick of the week. Okay, we made it to the final page in the final 4 games. Packers at the Buccaneers. And it was the visitors from Green Bay getting the dub here, 14-12. The Packers will host the New England Patriots, while the Buccaneers, weather permitting, will host the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. Both teams are 2-1. And I say weather permitting because there's a rather large hurricane that may possibly make landfall on Florida's west coast, and it may impact the Buccaneers game. And that's Hurricane Ian if you haven't been watching the news lately. Okay. 35 passes for the Packers for 248 yards, averaging 7.09 yards per pass, and 99 total passes for 686, 6.93 yards per pass, 228.7 yards per game. That's number 19 in the NFL. All right, 42 passes for Tampa Bay for 251, 5.98 average. 103 plays, 634 yards, 6.16 average, 211.3 yards per game. That's 20 seconds. Looking at the ground attacks, and neither were good. 25 carries and 67 yards for the Packers, 2.68 yards per run. 81 total runs in 3 games for 381 yards, 4.7 yards per run, 127 yards per game, setting them at number 9. Tampa Bay, meantime, only ran 14 times for 34 yards, 2.43 average. For the season, 77 rushes for 258 yards, 3.35 average per run, only 86 rush yards per game, putting them at number 25. As far as total yards, they favored the Packers, who ran 60 plays for 315 yards, 5.25 yards per play. 180 total plays for 1,067 yards, 5.93 average per play, 355.7 yards per game. This will put them 12th in total yards. As for the Buccaneers, 56 plays for 285, 5.09 average. 180 total plays, 892 yards, 4.95 average yards per play, 297.3 yards per game, puts them at number 27 in total yards. First downs favored Tampa Bay, 19-14. The Bucs now have 50 first downs to 41 for the Packers. Green Bay went 6-15 for 40%, 14-33 now for the season. The Buccaneers, 2 of 11 on third down for 18.2%. They're now 12 of 42. No fourth down plays for the Packers. They remain 0 for 2. And Tampa went 1 for 1, putting them at 1 for 2. The Green Bay Packers, who are the least penalized team in football entering week 3, got hit with 8 flags for 65 yards, and that brings their season totals to 13 and 100. Tampa Bay was flagged 6 times for 40. They now have 19 penalties for 166. Time of possession favors the Packers, 33-25 to 26-35. 38 total tackles for the Packers gives them 123. And 21 solo tackles puts them at 69. They had 3 sacks on Tom Brady, bringing their season total to 7. They recorded their first 2 forced fumbles of the season. 3 more passes defense doubles their total to 6. And they still have the 1 interception from earlier this year with no defensive touchdowns. Can't stop yawning, sorry. Okay, 48 solo tackles for the Buccaneers, 129 total. And 29 solo tackles, which puts them at 67. They had 1 sack the entire week. And they entered week 3 as the leader in sacks. Now they're at 11. They had 2 forced fumbles in this game as well. That pushes their total to 7, which is tied for the league lead. 1 pass defense gives them 13. And they added another interception. This is going to be number 5 on the season, plus a defensive touchdown. Tampa Bay on the closing line was -1. Over-under is 42.5. 2 teams combined for 26 points, so this game finishes under. The two teams combined for 116 plays and an even 600 yards, averaging 5.17 yards per play combined. I picked Tampa to win 24-17 and to cover the 1 point. They lose by a couple. So I lost both picks. Rams at Cardinals. And this one goes to the defending Super Bowl champs as they win in the desert 20-12. Play goes to 2-1, and they're off to San Francisco to face the arch rival Niners on Monday night. The Cardinals are off to Charlotte on Sunday to play the Panthers. Okay, Los Angeles passed 25 times for 239 yards, 9.56 yards per play. 102 passes for 702, averaging 6.88 yards per pass. 234 yards passing per game. That's number 17. The Cardinals, 58 passes for 295, 5.09 average. In 3 games, 145 passes for 744, 5.13 average, 248 yards per game. That's number 12 in the NFL. As far as ground attacks, 20 rushes for the Rams for 100. That's an even 5 yards per run. 65 total runs for 217, 3.34 average, and 72.3 yards per game. That's 30th, I should say, in the NFL. The Cardinals, 21 rushes, 70 yards, 3.33 average, 77 total runs for 316, 4.1 average per game, or 4.1 average per play, and 105.3 per game. Sounds like a radio station, 105.3. Anyway, the Cardinals are 17th in rushing. Okay, 45 total plays by Los Angeles for 339 yards, 7.53 average per play. 167 total plays ran for 919 yards, 5.5 yards per play, 306.3 yards per game. That puts them at number 25. Cardinals ran 79 plays for 365 yards, 4.62 yards per play. 216 total plays, the most of any team in the NFL, with 1,060 yards, 4.91 average per play, 353.3 yards per game, which puts them at number 15. First downs favored Arizona, 23-15. The Cardinals now have 69 first downs to 58 for the champs. Okay, third down conversions, 3 of 8 for the Rams at 37.5%. They're now 15-31. And third downs continue to be an issue for the Cardinals. They went 6 of 18 for 33.3%. They are now 12 of 43 on the season. No fourth down plays for the Rams. They stay 2 of 4. But the Arizona Cardinals, this is where they thrive on fourth downs. They went 4 for 5 for 80% against the Rams on fourth down. And for the season, they're 10 for 14, 71.4%. The Rams were flagged 6 times for 35 yards, 13 total penalties for 216. Arizona was flagged 6 times as well, but for 50 yards, 219 yards on 23 penalties. Time of possession favors Arizona, 33 minutes, 56 seconds to just 26 minutes and 4 seconds for LA. The Rams defense records 58 tackles, bringing them to 143. 43 solo, they're up to 81 in that category. 2 sacks on Kyler Murray, that gives them 7 total for the year. They remain at 3 forced fumbles. They had 3 passes defended, puts their total to 9. And they remain with 4 interceptions on the season with no defensive scores. The Cardinals defense, just 33 tackles, 15 solo, 121 and 60 are their tackle numbers. 1 sack on the afternoon gives them 2. 1 forced fumble gives them 6. They had no passes defended in this game, so they stay at 6 in that category. And they have yet to record an interception or defended defensive touchdown. This is the second of the three teams who have yet to do either one of those things. Collect an interception or score a defensive touchdown. Closing line was Los Angeles -3. Over-unders 49. 32 points was the total that finished under. Two teams combined for 124 plays and 740 yards, averaging 5.68 yards combined. I picked LA to win 30-23, and I picked them to cover the 3 points. They do so, winning by 8. On to Sunday Night Football with the San Francisco 49ers at the Denver Broncos. Now, I have predicted that this was going to be a defensive battle, and boy, was I right. The Broncos ended up winning this game 11-10. That's like the Rockies beating the Giants in a high-scoring baseball game. The Broncos go to 2-1. They're off to Vegas to face the Raiders, while the Niners at 1-2 will host the defending Super Bowl champions on Monday night. All right, looking at the passing numbers first, 33 passes for the Broncos for 160, averaging 4.85 yards per pass, 106 passes for 691, 6.52 average, 230.3 yards per pass or per game. That's number 18. For the 49ers, 29 passes for 179 yards, 6.17 yards per pass. In 3 games, they have 81 passes for 518, averaging 6.4 yards per pass and 172.7 per game. That's 29th. Okay, as far as ground attacks, 33 rushes for the Broncos for 101, averaging 3.06 per run. 84 total rushes for 353, 4.2 average, 117.7 yards per game. That's number 12. And for the 49ers, 19 rushes, 88 yards, 4.63 average per play. 2022 in 3 games, they have 161 plays, 453 yards, averaging 4.49 yards per run and 151 yards per game. That's number 6 in the NFL. And neither team had 300 yards of offense in this game. 261 on 66 plays for Denver, 3.95 average. 3 games, 190 plays for 1,044 yards, 5.49 average. 348 yards per game ranks them 16th. San Francisco, 267 yards on 48 plays, averaging 5.56 per play. 182 total plays for 971, averaging 5.34 yards per play. 323.7 yards per game. That's number 24. First downs favored the Broncos, 14-13. Denver now has 54 first downs, San Fran 55. Okay, the Broncos were 6 for 19 on third downs at 31.6%. They're now 17 of 46 for the season. The Niners, they were terrible on third downs as well. We talked about how bad the Raiders were. The Niners were just as bad. They were 1 for 10. That's 10%. They're now 15 of 42 for the season. All right. No fourth down plays for neither team, so the Broncos remain at 1 of 2 for the season. The Niners remain at 2 of 5. 5 penalties for the Broncos for 30 yards. And they lead the NFL in total penalties and penalty yardage, as they now have 30 flags for 236 yards. San Francisco was flagged 7 times for 40 yards, 20 total penalties for 165. Time of possession favors Denver, 34 minutes and 29 seconds versus 25 minutes and 31 seconds for the 49ers. Or as E40 calls them, Bang Bang Niner Gang. All right, the Broncos defense, 36 tackles, 13 solo. I didn't write their season numbers in, but that's okay. They have 4 sacks in this game, giving them 10. They record forced fumble number 7 on the year, as they did force 1 fumble. 6 passes defended, doubles their total in this category to 12. And they got their first interception of the year. The Niner defense, 43 tackles, 4 solo tackles, 112 and 44 are the totals there. They too had 4 sacks in this game. This brings their total to 9. 2 forced fumbles, their first 2 of the season. 5 passes defense, so they've matched the Broncos with 12 in that category. No interceptions or touchdowns, so they still have 3 from earlier this season. Closing line is San Francisco minus 1.5, over under 44.5. This game finished as well under that, and this was the lowest scoring game in week 3 as the Broncos and Niners combined for just 21 points, 114 offensive plays, and 528 yards of offense, 4.63 yards per play by the 2 teams. I picked the Niners and straight up 21-17, and I picked them to cover the 1.5 points. They lose by a point. So I take the losses in both categories. And finally, Monday Night Football. The Dallas Cowboys at the New York Football G-Men. And that was the Cowboys getting the best of Daniel Jones and the Giants as they won this one 23-16. Both teams at 2-1 are tied for second place in the NFC East. Dallas will host the Washington Commanders on Sunday, while the Giants will welcome Justin Fields and the Bears to the Meadowlands. All right. Cowboys offense, 31 passes, 215 yards, 6.94 yards per pass, 104 total passes for 618, 5.94 average per pass, 206 yards per game. This puts them at number 24. New York, 37 passes for 169, 4.57 per pass. For the season, 92 plays, 92 passes, 487 yards. 5.29 yards per pass, 162.3 yards per game. That's number 30. All right, how about 30 rushes for 176 yards for the Dallas Cowboys, 5.87 yards per pass, or per run, I should say, and 75 runs for 354, 4.72 yards per run. 118 yards a game. That's number 11. And the Giants' ground attack was also pretty good. 25 rushes for 167. 6.68 average per run. And in 3 games, 90 rushes, 508. 5.64 yards per play. 169.3 yards on the ground per game. That's number 4 in the league. Total yards, 61 plays for Dallas for 391, 6.41 average per play. 179 total plays, 972 yards, 5.43 average yards per play. 324 yards a game, which puts them at number 23. The Giants, 62 plays for 336, average 5.42 yards per play. 182 total plays for 995 yards, 5.46 yards per play, 331.7 yards a game. That puts them at number 21. All right, first downs favored Dallas, 23-22. The Cowboys now at 54, Giants at 59. Dallas was 5 of 13 on third downs, 38.5%. That puts them 11 of 38 for the year. Next, cramping up. But we're almost done. New York was 3 of 11 on third downs for 27.3% and 11 of 39 for the game. So both are around that 28-29% area in third down conversions. Okay, 1 for 1 on fourth downs for the Dallas Cowboys. They're down 4 for 7 on the season. 0 for 1 for the Giants, 2 of 3 for the year. All right, both at 8 penalties. The Cowboys, 70 yards. Cowboys had 70 yards on their 8 penalties. That gives them 23 for 180. Hit that 188. New York got 57 yards on their 8 penalties. Gives them 24 for 164. Time of possession favors the Cowboys. 32 minutes and 42 seconds. 27 minutes and 18 seconds for the Giants. Dallas's defense, 46 total tackles, 134 on the season. 37 solo tackles, 79 on the season. 5 sacks on Daniel Jones, 5. That brings their total to 13, which leads the NFL after 3 games. They still have the 1 forced fumble, as they did not record one on Monday. 5 passes defended gives them 12, and they got their first interception of the year. For the New York Giants, 37 tackles, 119 total, and no sacks on the game, so they stay at 44. No sacks in the game, or rather, no forced fumbles, so they stay at 44. They had no sacks either, so they remain at 3. They also didn't have a forced fumble in the game, so they're stuck at 3 in that category. They did have 3 passes defended, which gives them 9. And they have yet to record a touchdown or an interception. Closing line was New York -1, over under 38.5. This game slightly finished over by this much. Yeah, this much. 39 points. So this game finishes just over. 123 total plays, 727 total yards of offense, 5.91 combined average yards per play. I picked the Cowboys to win 23-20 and to cover the 1 point as the road underdog, and I got both picks. So how did I do it? My picks? Let's take a look. 9-7 straight up this week and 30-17-1 for the season. Against the spread, 7-8-1. So my overall record against the spread is 22-22-4. All right, so those are the recaps. Now let's run quickly through my week 4 power rankings. All right. At number 32, down 3 spots, are the Houston Texans. At number 31, also down 3 spots, the Seattle Seahawks. At number 30, unchanged, is the Chicago Bears. At 29, up 2 spots, the Carolina Panthers. At number 28, dropping 4 spots, the Washington Commanders. Up 5 to number 27 are the Atlanta Falcons. New York Jets slipped a spot to 26. The Arizona Cardinals fall 2 spots to 25. While conversely, the Tennessee Titans rose 2 spots to number 24. The Pittsburgh Steelers down 3 to number 23. The New Orleans Saints down 5 spots, number 18. And here's our biggest drop in my power rankings this week. The Las Vegas Raiders plummeting 7 to number 21. And right next to them, one of 2 teams with this jump this week. The Jacksonville Jaguars moved up 7 spots to number 20. Up 2 spots to number 19 are the Cleveland Browns. Up 1 spot to 18 are the Indianapolis Colts. Down 2 spots to 17 are the Detroit Lions. Up 6 spots to number 16, the Dallas Cowboys. Up 2 spots and virtually trading places with the Lions are the Minnesota Vikings. Down 2 to number 14 are the New England Patriots. At number 13, unchanged, the New York Giants. Number 12, down 2 spots, the San Francisco 49ers. Spots to 6 to 11, the Cincinnati Bengals, the reigning AFC champs. Falling 4 spots to number 10, the Los Angeles Chargers. Up 2 spots to number 9, the Denver Broncos. Inching up 1 spot to 8, the Baltimore Ravens. Falling 4 spots to 7, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Up 1 to number 6, the Green Bay Packers. Down 3 spots to number 5, the Kansas City Chiefs. Holding steady at number 4, unchanged, are the LA Rams. Number 3, up 2 spots, are the Philadelphia Phillies. And relinquishing the top spot and falling to number 2 is the Buffalo Bills, which means the new number 1 is also tied with the Jaguars for the biggest jump this week, and that's the Miami Dolphins. Moving from number 8 to number 1. All right, so another edition of the week that was is in the books as we just wrapped up week number 3. We'll be back tomorrow, or should I say later today, as it's almost 12:30 a.m. here in Phoenix, with a look at the week 5 college football schedule and all the broadcast teams for the games coming up this weekend. And there are a couple of games that are affected by Hurricane Ian, because I think the Florida Gators game has been moved to Sunday. But I'll fill you in on all that information later on today. I want to get it out this morning just to get it over with. And then Thursday, tomorrow, I'll make my picks for week 4 in the NFL, both straight up and against the spread. And I'm hoping for a better week than this week. So join me for both of those. In the meantime, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell twice every time I go live. Big Al signing off. Thanks for watching and enjoy the pigskin. Peace out.